Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a review of the kokuryu, or the Black Dragon. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than the standard process, as I normally do unboxing, cutting video, unboxing, unsharpening, cutting video, sharpening, cutting video, and then final review. However, since this thing is already hair shaving sharp, which I showed in the live stream that I did literally a few hours ago, and I've been swinging this thing around for the last couple of days, it's finally review time. And I've also spliced a bunch of other shit together. I don't remember what I've already filmed, but I'm going to basically puzzle this thing together. I'm trying a new review method. Just work with me here. Now, the only measurement Space Ghost was able to send me was the Nagasa and the Suka length. The Nagasa for the kokuryu is 27.5 inches. And the Suka length is also 10.5 inches. As normal, I will do the length, in-depth measurements, and weight. So let's begin with all of the technical measurements and other bibble babble. The Nagasa that I measure is actually 7 3/4 of an inch. So 1/4 inch longer than the measurements. And I measure from the fushira to the end of the kashira for my grip length measurements, which is precisely 10.5 inches if we do not include the extra fraction of an inch that the dragon carving gives it. Next, zero that. We will do the, it was on the filthy millimeters. There's not American units. We will do the thickness down the spine. This I actually think I picked up from Shadiversity. I think he was the first one I saw doing this. So we have 0.29 inches at the base of the habaki, quarter the length up the blade. It tapers down to 2.3, halfway up the blade to 0.21. I don't know. It was 0.23, then 0.21. Here at the half mark. Then we have 3/4 up the full length of the blade. It tapers down to 0.21. I don't know why I keep wanting to say 2 point something. And then here at the very tippity top, right where it forms the point, it tapers down to 0.11 of an inch. So just a moment. I bloody hate random ass calls. So from 0.29 of an inch down to 0.11 of an inch, I believe that gives us almost a 15% distal taper, if the math I'm doing in my head is right. If any of you out there are better at math than me, which 90% of you most likely are, Please do the math. The width at the base of the habaki is 1.23 inches. And the width at where I want to say the kisaki begins is 0.87 of an inch. So it has a decent width here at the habaki, and it tapers in both the width and thickness, which makes it a very light, maneuverable sword. Now, I do remember that I did take some, I did disassemble this sword and tell my thoughts on that. So that outlaw will now take over. Take it away, outlaw! Hold on, outlaw. Fight or a fierce animal, what have you, lion, tiger, bear, oh my, should be facing out to show that this has been drawn, this is a fight, we are doing this. So again, business side, oop, and peaceful side. Next, we have a dragon kashira. Now, this is the fushira, this is the kashira. As we can see here, the dragon, if my, damn it, my damn camera would pick it up. Okay, how about over here? We have a dragon kashira with clouds on the other side. Again, that's the fushira. I'm an idiot. And then we have a dragon kashira. Now, these are not the most defined. These are clearly budget fittings for a budget sword. But they are more well-defined than most of the expensive swords I have. This is especially true of the only exception being the Unakubizakuri with the raptor fittings. So my Hanwei sword is the only exception to the detail of the fittings. In fact, if we take a look here at the Minuki is actually a lot more well-defined than the Kashira. I can make out individual scales and patterings, that's a word now, patterings, in both of the Minuki. The Seppa of a reasonable quality and thickness, very sturdy. This is all brass fittings, by the way. And Space Ghost said that he had taken the original fittings off and changed them. So, I don't know if the Seppa are original. Space Ghost can answer that in the comments. But I do know he changed the Suba to this one. And the Suba actually has a lot of small detail if I can keep from dropping it again. I can make out facial details. They're not the best. Again, this is a budget sword, but I'm actually very impressed with Sweido's fittings, to be quite honest with you. And we're going to move on to something I usually don't talk about, the Nakago. And just the fact that this Nakago is actually clean. And what I mean by that is there's no big burr that digs into the wood of the Sukakor that adds in friction and traction. The blade is remarkably straight as well. Again, this is all going into the review, so I'll probably repeat myself a lot. Now, there is rust on the Nakago that doesn't really bother me too much, as long as there's no rust on the blade. Mild surface rust on a Nakago I can kind of ignore. At this point, as I've gotten into my sword career, it's like, upon realizing that there's actually supposed to be a protective layer of rusting patina on the Nakago over time. Mirror polished blade, too. I'm assuming this is stropping compound residue here, where the shoulders of the blade are. I could get that off, but it doesn't seem like it's causing any problems, so I'm not even going to bother. I tend to like to keep the sword in the original condition that I got it in for the most part. And I am not actually all that good at restoring shit. I usually end up making new shit for shit. Here's the Sukakor. Without any wrapping on it, it does feel a little small. Of course, this is what I would... Of course, we all know what the hell blades I tend to swing around. The length and... Oh, the lengths and size of blades that I tend to swing around, so, yeah. Maybe I'm not the best to ask about what size blade denotes a Wakazaki to someone. But yeah. Now there is a crack in the Sukakor. Again, you usually see me harp about this, but this was a gift, and it is a very well used and very loved sword, so I'm not going to be critical about it. And honestly, the crack only extends roughly 3/4 of a full inch. If I really wanted to, I could just put some super glue in there with a little clamp, and it solved that problem, no big deal. Upon taking off the Samegawa, I mean the wrap, I'm going to say this is real Samegawa. I don't remember if Space Ghost told me that it was real or not. I haven't reread the tweet. Not the tweet, the Instagram post when he told me about the sword. Again, Space Ghost, if I sound stupid, correct me in the comments. But I am planning to rewrap this. I may just go blackety black blackjack. Again, there's a bucket beneath me. Now we're going to move on to the Habaki. The Habaki actually has an interesting feature that you do not actually see on a lot of replica swords. That is common on Japanese swords, and that's a second slit in the blade, on the blade side, for this other shelf to rest on. So when you slip on the Habaki, the blade actually sits in the Habaki like so, which actually helps increase the fit and shock absorption that the Habaki is there for. But this has been enough supplementary information. This is already 9 minutes added to a more than likely will be 30+ minute video. So until next time, my noble band of outlaws, Outlaw Samurai tells all y'all be crazy rednecks, be safe, use your weapons, and back to, I guess, future present outlaw. Thank you, past outlaw, on the topic of the disassembling of the sword. And as I mentioned, yes, there was a little crack in the Suka core. I'm not really going to make a big deal of that. This is a second-hand sword, and it has also been very much used and loved by Space Ghost, and it will still be used by me. And loved by me, because Space Ghost is sending me a video on how to maintain this thing. Especially its edge. Since he said he stropped it, and I'm not good at stropping. Every time I strop a blade, I end up dulling the damn thing. Worse than ever. So he's going to send me... I'm not going to attempt to strop this thing at all until I get practice doing it on my cheaper blades. The ones I don't really care about dulling, and I can just run through the work sharp and get sharp again. But yes, I did take it apart, and I did note that the Nakago is very well shaped. And there's another thing I wanted to mention. I don't think sword manufacturers today get their Nakagos right. And what I mean by that is when you look at swords on YouTube forged in Japan, Nihonto, they have much wider Nakago than the swords we get here in the States and order from sword manufacturers. I almost think they kind of do a hybrid of a knife, longsword, and Nakago tang. And what I mean by that is it's generally shaped similar to a longsword tang in the Nakago style, but is also much smaller, like a knife tang would be, if that makes sense. The sweido, on the other hand, is much closer to what I've seen in terms of its size compared to Japanese originals. Also, this is a feature on a lot of actual Nihonto. The little extra slit in the habaki for this blade shoulder to sit on. Now, as we can see down here by the habaki, there's a slight bit of rust and or tarnishing. Honestly, I may just end up taking some of my automotive polish and just running my thumb over it in an attempt to get it off. If it works, great. If it doesn't, at least I tried. Also, I'll have to clean this blade. Oh, Space Ghost, I'm so sorry. I think there's a little tiny nick in the edge. Which, the nick in question is right there. You can just barely see it if I put my thumb there. See? That's the plus and minus of having a very acute edge on a blade. It cuts like a motherfucking razor, but at the same time, it's relatively fragile. But that little nick, I don't think is big enough to impede any further cutting performance. Also, I don't know what steel this is made from. Whether it's T10 or what. So, Space Ghost, if you know what steel this is made from and you see this video at this point, chime in the comments below. I'm going to go under the assumption that it's a T10 blade, since Gargoyle has told me that a lot of sweido swords are T10. So I'm going under that assumption that this is a T10 sword. And with that in mind, it did receive quite a bit of scratches and scuffs. It came to me bright and shiny, polished and new. But we all know what happens when bright, shiny, polished and new shit comes into my grubby little hands, it gets scratched up, scuffed up, and potentially chipped. My uncle being a tsundere as usual. But yeah, I am really liking this, even more than I thought I could. And I have to be objective because this is a review of this. I will say, though, it's earning brownie points for me with the square suba. Something that probably none of you know, at least I haven't said anything about, is that I actually love the look of the square rounded suba. That is the square suba with the rounded edges. I love this geometric suba. I'm not particularly a big fan of the circular suba. It just kind of seems too generic. I kind of like the uniqueness of square subas. But yeah. Now I will once again turn the review back over to Past Outlaw. I know I said Future Outlaw before, but this is Past Outlaw. With the part about my wrapping, of re-wrapping this, and something that very astute viewers of my channel will not, very astute viewers will notice this, but non-astute viewers will not notice it until I say anything. So take it away, Past Outlaw. And here's the rewrap of Space Ghost's sword. I haven't come up with a name for it yet. Until I name it, it's still effectively known as the Space Ghost sword. I'm working on the name. But as you can see, I've done my classic paracord Ito wrap. Very astute viewers of the channel will take a very close look at this wrap and realize that something is out of the ordinary with my rewraps. I'll give you a minute to observe. Did you find out what it was? It's the fact that I left the manuki in, or rather I put the manuki back in place. And I usually don't do that, but this is an exception. The manuki are so thin that it does not impede my grip or feel uncomfortable. The second part is that it is in kung fu fashion, which means the manuki are inside my palms when I grip the sword, giving me additional grip. I would show the blade in the scabbard, but right now I have some super glue drying in the mouth of the koiguchi to fix its loose fit. And we are back. So as Past Outlaw said, yes, I did leave the manuki in this grip, and I'm actually very much liking this. The reason being is that these manuki are so thin and minute that they really don't add any kind of extra thickness to the grip, unlike your standard really bulbous manuki. If they were really bulbous, I would have tried putting them more in the center. But if you notice, they are actually reversed in kung fu style, meaning they're in my palms. They're in the palms of my hand instead of where my fingers wrap around. And that actually gave me a bit more purchase when I was doing my cuts with this sword. And I did all kinds of cuts with this thing. Forward hand, reverse hand, non-dominant reverse hand. I'm pretty much ambidextrous when it comes to swords. Now, something that I just now realized that I completely forgot to do while in the measurements section was the weight of this thing. Keep in mind that paracord is heavier than your standard sageo, so I'm actually going to kind of equate for that by taking off a few ounces. So without further ado, don'ts and probably shouldn'ts, let's get started. So at the heaviest this sword tops out at is 2 pounds, 7.8 ounces. I'm going to take off that 0.8 as weight from the extra weight from the paracord. So 2 pounds, 7 ounces is what this thing weighs, roughly speaking. It's what the scale tops out as. And honestly, it's not that overwhelming or encumbersome. Like I keep saying, it's a very lively blade in my hand. Though, keep in mind, I usually even swing swords like this one-handed, and it's supposed to have like a 31-inch blade. So I'm maybe not the best person to tell you what a one-handed sword can, the criteria for a one-handed sword can be. Next, we'll get to the saya. It's a black ishime lacquer. There's obviously scratches, dings, and all kinds of chips in it. This also tells me at the bottom that they just put a plastic... Hey! Sorry about that. A plastic coating. Sorry about that, allergies. They just coated the bottom of this sword with plastic instead of trying to put any kind of horn fitting, which I don't know about sweido's prices, but I'm going to assume that this is somewhere within the $200 region. And that usually... Just a moment. Ow. Sorry about that. Since this is in the, I'm going to assume this is in the $200 region of swords, that corners will be cut and corners have been cut. I do have to admit I am a fan of this teardrop, raindrop like saya. I'm not like Matthew Jensen. I don't really care about like tapering down to a fine point. I actually prefer my sayas to be robust and capable of being used as a secondary weapon if I have to. Basically, if I lose my sword, I can pull the saya out and beat the ever-loving hell out of whatever I'm fighting. And it's not going to break on me. Or at least not going to break easily. Sayas can be replaced quite a lot easier than a sword blade can. Now, I do like the ishime lacquer. I am a fan of ishime lacquer more than I am of piano finishes, just because of the fact that the piano finish is actually more fragile. The fingerprints aren't exactly appealing. And the last part is, well, if you touch a piano finish up with a black Sharpie, it just obviously tells that you did it. With this, you can actually... with this, you can actually just use a Sharpie and it actually looks in place more. I left the original blue Sageo that came on the saya on it, mainly because I like the contrast between this shade of blue and the ishime lacquer. I may do some kind of fancy wrapping with it, I don't know yet. Next, we'll move on to the koigata. The koigata is actually kind of interesting because it's a squared off one. This is actually the first sword I have that has a squared off koigata and no shirodome. That's what I was trying to figure out first impressions video of the Nanabukoto Raptor. I'm doing these videos somewhat simultaneously. That's why I have both of the swords present. And no Shidodome, which is a plus. I think we all hate Shidodome or Shitodome. But in any case, it's actually the first sword I have with a squared off koigata. And I kind of like it. Now obviously there are chips and dings in the plastic coating. Again, this is just wood with a plastic coating, or plastic enamel. No horn. Even though they do try to make it appear to be horn. The Koiguchi is nice. As I mentioned before, I fixed it with some super glue. It's in there good. It doesn't have like monstrously high retention, but it has retention that I find satisfying. As in, I can do this, and as long as I don't shake it, it comes out. That's what I consider satisfactory. Easily with the thumb draw, and I can just do that. Now, as far as I'm aware, I've already covered the disassembly and the rewrapping portions as well. Like I said, this is a video broken up into multiple parts that I'm going to have to edit together. So it's probably going to be about 30 to 40 minutes long, and hopefully I have enough space on my phone to accommodate that after I empty out the trash. So until next time, my noble band of outlaws, it's conclusion time. So, conclusion, I really likey this sword. And I may or may not be buying my own sweido in the future. And I also may or may not be also attempting to dip my toes into the Murasame L6 and Murasame swords in general to kind of get my somewhat taste of what L6 and what Murasame's L6 and all that can be done. But that's at a much later date. I'm not in a position to be buying a whole lot of swords at the moment. But in any case, conclusion, I really love this sword. And it's not just because it's a gift. I love the sharpness. I love the aesthetics. The only thing that I would change about this sword is I would make it bigger. I would make, like, I'm not even talking to an old katana size. I would want to turn this into a full-sized nodachi if I had the ability. With the same fittings cranked up to nodachi level. But that's just me. The downsides, I really don't have any downsides to this sword. And it's not because it was a gift, it's because it's not new. Space Ghost had already told me that he had done customization to this before it ever met my hands. He let me know that he had done customizing of his own on this sword before, so I can't find any bad points that Space Ghost has not already corrected. And I'm not about to try hunting down minute little, like, splinters of that, because it's... If I did that, I'd have to go back and do it to all my other swords. The only thing that I could somewhat consider a flaw is the small little crack in the Suka core, and it's not even really a crack, it's more just the Suka core came unglued about 1/4 of an inch down from where the Nakago goes in to the Suka core. But with its tight paracord wrapping, that's no longer a problem. I had to use a fucking deadfall hammer to get the sumbitch back on there. But yes, that is the only gripe that I can say to this sword, is the small little crack. And even I can't even justifiably say that's a bad thing because this is a secondhand sword and it's been used. Now, if I had bought this new from the factory and it had that, I'd be a lot more upset. But I temper my expectations, okay? As I grow older and I grow wiser and I grow more patient with age, believe it or not, I learn to accept gripes and I learn to better my opinions and judgments. But in any case, that's all I have to say on the matter. Until next time, my noble band of outlaws, Outlaw Samurai tells all y'all, be crazy rednecks, be safe in using your weapons. I'm out, peace, and look forward to the videos with the Nanabukoto in the future. See ya.